Today, our topic is how you too can lead your business and team through a successful emergency response. Presented by Colton Wiegers, Chief Operating Officer at Wiegers Financial and Benefits, and Pat Kyle, Director of Branch Operations at Wiegers Financial and Benefits. Thank you, Colton and Pat, for joining us today. Please start whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Thank you, Carly, and thanks, Wes, for having us. For everyone who's tuning in today, we're going to go into a bit of what we're going to go through today. Some changes. I know that some of you may have signed up. We originally were going to be doing this presentation with Deb at our office, was going to be presenting, and she's bumping to September. So we wanted to keep the conversation similar for anyone who had registered and was hoping to get some of this info out. We're going to be talking again about how to guide your team through a successful emergency response. And I really encouraged and pushed Pat to join me today because, you know, I can be sharing on behalf of all the work that she's been doing, but I think it was really important to share with you guys someone who's been on the ground level of this from absolute start to where we are now, and share with you the things that have worked well for us, the things that have not worked well, the things that we're predicting a bit for the future of how our emergency response will evolve. And those are all details that Pat's going to share with you, and I'll give her a bit of an introduction too as we get going. My goal is to be moderating this a bit more than sharing. And I told Pat this before. I said, you've got all the info and the knowledge. We wanted to make it a bit of a conversation, and I'll just be kind of prompting her to share what's been going on at our office. Before we get going, I want to get a pulse on the people who are here. So we whipped up this survey before. I'm going to see how this works. Do you guys see a survey right now, and can you respond? We want to know from you, how has your business or the business that you're working in, how do you feel things are? Are they going fantastic? Is it, in the recovery, really tough? I'm guessing we're going to have a range, which we're kind of getting some votes in right now. Can see the survey, looks good. Awesome. This is our substitute to be able to do something with you guys since we can't see you. Lots of my presenting has been through Zoom, so it's nice to be able to do something and hear back from people as well. And so far with the results we've got, most in that top half, again, maybe it might not be relevant, or if you don't want to answer, we don't see what everyone says. But again, we're curious where people are generally at. I guess while people are finishing the last few responses, Pat, where do you think we're at on this one, if we were to pick one of them?
I think we're actually in a fantastic mode. We've had a very good few months since March 13th when everything switched. We stopped, we paused, we pivoted, and we put together some really good business continuity plans on day one, followed up by getting a team of crisis response individuals in our building, in our organization together. Everyone has unique abilities, so this was not all me. This was a collective group of people, and I feel that fast forward to July 15th, where we're at today, I think we've done a fantastic job of pivoting and adapting to this pandemic.
Awesome. I like to hear that. See, that's the kind of confidence that you guys know that we feel pretty good. So hopefully what we're sharing can help you guys jump from that. I see we've got someone in the recovery, someone okay but not as strong as you normally be, and then a number of people in some hurdles but doing good. Hopefully what we share today can help bump people up into that, fantastic, didn't skip a beat going forward here. We obviously had the benefit where we were an essential business, so we didn't have to close our doors and deal with the big layoffs and then coming back. So that's helped a lot. And I'm going to have Pat elaborate on some of those in a few moments here. So thanks for participating in that survey, everyone. Appreciate it. And we should be, I believe you can see us still, but Carly, if we're not on the full screen and you can flip us back to there. Oh, perfect. Awesome. So I've worked with Pat for, I guess, all of my time here, but I've known Pat since I was very young. She's worked at Wiegers, like literally a baby, I guess, if we're being honest with you guys, like since I was born, because she's known both of my parents, Cliff and Deb, for as long as they've worked together, where they met and worked in Canada Life together. And since then, you've been with us for, I made a post on LinkedIn actually, was it 20 plus years with us or 25?
No, just going into my 21st year.
Okay, it's 20.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I was adding you an extra 5 years of experience,
Easy,
maybe.
easy,
Yeah, sorry.
easy.
Sorry. Kenzie says, go, Pat, go.
Go, Pat, go.
Yeah.
Hi, Kenzie.
So Pat brings a ton of great experience. I actually was working through a strategic plan that we were working on before COVID hit. And one of the things that we established is how important and essential that director of operations role is, and how important Pat is. I'm going to pump her tires a bit here. She's got years of experience with us and running a very successful company here with manages around 40 people. And that's the knowledge that I'm hoping to draw out of Pat today. So again, usually I'm on these and I'm kind of the one sharing a lot more. I'm going to be leveraging Pat and our team to get you guys some good info. So as we go into this, let's take it from the top, Pat, I guess. Walk us through, everyone's been through what their business went through, but give us a brief on, what happened when, for lack of words, crap hit the fan, and what you had to do and what was going through your mind there.
Well, I look back to the March 13th date. It's in my head every day. And that was the day that the federal government announced their travel restrictions. And we had employees with booked flights out of country. COVID was just being talked about. And everyone was coming to me with, Pat, what should I do? What are we going to do? What's next? And, it was a little bit overwhelming. I didn't have the answers. I didn't have a plan. So March 13th, move on to March 17th, and through to March 23rd. And by March 23rd, we literally had everyone, probably 95% of our employees working remotely by March 23rd. So March 13th to March 23rd with weekends in between. Every day, every minute, every hour, things changed. And I was the one who was leading the charge. And if there's anything somebody who is managing an organization with, is be available, be calm, put your plan together. You're going to have to pivot and change it. And you just have to learn to adapt. You definitely need to have that human aspect of your role in full center, full force, because people are humans. They're all looking to you for direction and advice, and the safety and security of not only all of our valued employees internally, it was the safety of our clients as well, and making sure they're going to be okay.
And you nailed it there. I mean, again, when we think about the start of this, it feels like a lifetime ago. Yeah. And I remember it was crazy. It was hectic. People were super worried, right? It's, what am I doing with my kids? And, what's happening with our business? Do I have a job still? What's happening with, a relative of theirs or a friend that was traveling, or they maybe just got back from traveling? There's so many unknowns. So I want to really key in that you nailed that one point about being there and being calm. I learned very quickly that everyone reacted very different. And again, I'm sure everyone watching right now, you can attest that sometimes the people who are the most steady-handed and the calmest were kind of freaking out the most. It really affected people in a bizarre way, the whole pandemic. So having that calm, decisive leadership of, don't worry, we're going to get you through this. I think that was a huge thing that you did without even realizing. And looking back, of course, it's obvious, but it was so important at that time too.
And as well, you have a variety of different age groups and immune compromised employees and people with children, and the schools were shutting down and daycares were closing. So you absolutely had to be ready for everything that came your way. And you needed to apply logic, like what makes sense, what's logical, not that you want to anti-select because you don't want to and you shouldn't, but you need to take a look at those high risk situations and deal with them first. Make sure those individuals are calm and feel that they have confidence in your decision making. And I think we as an organization, not just me, we as an organization did a fantastic job at that.
No, I agree. And if you're going to be getting to this at some point as you kind of go through the journey, let me know. But I was going to see about expanding on that remote working side. And I guess the question, you can answer if you'd like, but I'm curious, how many people are still working remote? I'm working remote. And I guess Pat,
I'm pretty much working remote.
You're pretty remote?
Yeah, I'm pretty remote.
And we kind of don't actually know because we have alternating schedules other than when we're both here. So How has that piece changed? And if you're going to be getting into it in a couple of points, we can hold on to
I am, but we can talk about it now since it's fresh. As Colton had mentioned, we're an essential service, and we didn't have to close our doors. We did close our doors to the general public. That was a necessity due to just maintaining and making sure there was no viruses coming into our building. But putting everyone into the remote work status. Phil, our IT fellow, came in, and for 3-4 solid days straight, he had line up laptop computers that people had brought from home. He was installing proper software. He's virus scanning software. He was getting everyone hooked up with the remote access. So as he was doing that, those employees were grabbing it and running home. And the whole remote work is working. It is working. You need to trust your employees. You need to give them parameters in which they need to work. You have to check in on them. You have to make sure they're okay. This was new to our employees as well, and it wasn't comforting having to be forced home to be safe because it's a different environment. I myself was one of the last ones to remote work access, and let me tell you, a few days I struggled. It wasn't the same. I didn't have my stuff, my people. But fast forward to today, I am absolutely loving working from home. It's a gift. And you can adapt. You can reach out to your employees on any given moment of the day. You have scheduled times that you speak with them during the day. And our whole remote access is working. It is just a different way to do business. We've pivoted and changed some of our processes and procedures. And it's working beautifully. And we probably have about 60% of our staff back in-house, but the other 40% are still remote working due to compromised immune systems, children, and a variety of other different things that kind of fall into play here. But flexibility is where it's at right now, and I think we're going to continue down that road.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely agree. It's funny, when it first happened, you had some people that they had to go home. These immune compromised or kids, or just us clearing, pushing everyone home almost to a certain extent because we didn't know what was going on, right? Like it just was, if you can work home.
We thought it was going to be 2 weeks.
Exactly. I think a lot of people had that, we'll just do this for a little bit, push the pause button, but it really extended a lot more. And I know, because I chatted with you, managing people remotely is very hard. And even some of our team kind of came to the plate and said, I don't know if I work that well remotely. Mm-hmm. And they acknowledged kind of their side of it too, of like, I'm not as productive as if I'm in the office. And some were hoping and asking if they could be an exception that came back. So diving into that a bit, because that's part of, I think, our success in terms of managing the remote side, mm-hmm. and then having the ability to prolong it a bit more versus having to say everyone needs to come back because we don't know how to run this company unless everyone's in the same building. We've kind of adapted that. So what are some of the things that, for any managers or business owners in the audience here that, have helped us a lot in terms of managing the team effectively while they're split across the city?
Good question. We have, like I said, we've pivoted so many different directions and adapted, but something that we have put into place is technology called Workplace, and it's a parent of Facebook. Correct me if I'm wrong. It is wonderful. It's group chat, it's individual chat, you can create a team meeting in it, it's all video. It was just the most wonderful piece of technology that Colton actually introduced to us prior to COVID, and we hadn't adapted it until the day of COVID announcement. So it has been a godsend as well. A lot of our staff were doing activity sheets, just keeping their supervisors in their different divisions up to date as to what they're doing throughout the day, what clients they're dealing with, how things are progressing. The most important part was making sure the privacy, confidentiality of our clients was intact. And we needed to speak to that regular to make sure that all of those different aspects were being taken care of. But honestly, I've spoke to my teams, my direct reports, my employees in other divisions more during this whole pandemic than I probably did when I worked in the office, just because I just wanted to reach out to make sure they were okay. And if there was anything I could give them to help support them while they were working from home, listening to their kids in the background was, music to my ears, to think that we were able to do this and they were able to stay productive and stay employed.
Yeah, no, that's a great story to tell, because that was people's fear originally. When it was announced that schools were getting closed, the first thing is, what am I doing with my kids? Yeah. So I think it's great, like you said, that I've had a couple meetings where someone's kid pops in, I want to call, and it's kind of neat, because we're at a point now where everyone accepts that. Everyone accepts that. You sometimes you don't open Zoom properly the first time, or sometimes there's some sort of something going on in the background. It's kind of this lenience for each other in that sense. And workplace is one I just typed into the chat for anyone who wants to look into it. It was a great tool. We actually, as Pat mentioned, we were looking at it before. We had actually teed it up to, I think, launch April 1st. And then everything happened, and we said, let's move that timeline ahead a couple weeks. And we got it rolling out. The beauty of the workplace is that, and Candace is one of our teams on the call, and she can vouch for it, says the best, it's that you have this ability to replace what I would call the office interactions. So, when you either do a quick call to someone or stroll by their office, hey, I got a question about this, you've got an instant messaging platform through there. You can video chat. So again, the equivalent of like walking across the hall and opening the door and talking to someone, you can hit two buttons and you got a video call with them going. And it's by Facebook. So it functions and looks identical to Facebook. And this was one of our biggest reasons for getting it, was that we knew the learning curve would be so small compared to some other platforms where no one's ever used it before, right? So that's what we started doing in the meantime, because we thought it's a great place to have all the interactions. And we do a lot of social things in the office, and this was a good way to have, again, that social lighter side, rather than, you can't just do big group emails for, everything you need to do to keep people actually engaged and having fun and such like that.
Speaking of engagement, Colton, with Workplace, we have different groups set up. So one can be the social committee, because our social committee is a pretty big deal in this organization. So we've had scavenger hunts while working remotely through the social committee group. We've got gratitude, we've got exercise club. So it's such an engaging piece of software, and we are utilizing it to its max. And it's been absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I don't know what I would do without it now. Like, I love it. No, it's wonderful.
I totally agree. And exactly like you said, you got to take that social side. So for any of you guys that, work in an office, that
give it a shot.
That you do have a lot of activity and lots of fun stuff going on that's pretty much been put on hold. This is one of those outlets that we can't say enough in terms of how valuable it's been to keep our team not only in touch for work-related things, but keep a bit of the fun going. We, like Pat mentioned, we have a specific group that's just about sharing, personal things going on. And the big question is, and this is what the debate with remote working, I guess, is, are people productive? Are they going to get distracted? Are they going to open up Workplace and start reading what, someone else did the other weekend, and it's going to take away from their work? And I guess the realization that we came to, and I think this is something that's important for everyone, is that even when they're in your building, they're not 100% productive, right? Like, no one ever is. I'm not. Like, I know there's times I'm in my office and I'm sitting there dozing off in a sense and daydreaming for 10, 20 minutes or whatever. So let's not pretend that being at home is going to change that behavior dramatically, right? Like, we're still dealing with these same things, but if you're losing a lot of, like, let's call it the fun side and the camaraderie, that's an important piece that keeps you motivated to get up in the morning and to put on pants, because you don't need to put on pants anymore to get up for work these days. So you want people excited, because there is, it doesn't feel like this, you're locked in your own space doing your thing.
And I think too, with working remotely, I would never say that I'm glad COVID came, but I would never say that, because it's just an impossible thing to even comprehend what we're going through. But what it has done, in my opinion, is it's allowed us to reflect, and it's allowed us to think differently. It's allowed us to adapt differently. I trust my team. I just do. And if you don't trust your team, you're not going to be too successful given what we're going through. So I trust them. I don't worry about productivity. I worry about the end result. And if it takes you 2 hours or 10 hours to do the job, as long as it gets done at the end of the day, I'm completely fine with that. And I see that my staff overall are signing on earlier to remote access, working later into the evenings. They always seem to be available, which is not a good thing, but it is a good thing because they're committed to the cause. It's all of us working together to ensure the viability and stability of our organization, because if the company wins, we all win. So the whole remote working access, trust, that all has to factor into your teams. You cannot micromanage them remotely. You cannot micromanage your teams internally either. You need to let them do their thing. And as long as at the end of the day, their job is getting done, your clients are satisfied, the company succeeds, that should probably be the 3 points that I would like to parlay into this conversation. As well, workplace, every week, Cliff, the CEO, kicks off Monday morning, 8:30 on Workplace with a company address. I do it Wednesday morning at 8:30, and Colton closes off the week at 3:45. So that is a time for all of our team to tune in to Workplace. It's structured, everyone knows, and it's our opportunity as leadership group to talk to anything that's new, update, talk about things that are coming down the pipe, just to give them thanks and gratitude for a job well done. And it just allows us to stay connected as a leadership group to our team. So I just can't say enough about Workplace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really happy you touched on that address thing. This is part of when we look at, for our organization, what are we planning how do we get out of the weeds of this emergency and this pandemic, and then adapt to what would be called the new way of doing business, right? Before this, we were looking at doing more company addresses, because we've been frequently told, and for anyone who's watching, if you work in a bigger organization, really anything that's got any sort of level of compartmentalization, you're always going to have things that someone's like, well, I didn't know this was happening over here. Why didn't someone tell me about this? Or when did, and you do your best, in my opinion, you always do your best to communicate and to share what's going on, but you can't keep people informed of every single activity going on sometimes. So we actually had pondered back and forth doing more formal in-person addresses in the boardroom, which obviously we can't pack everyone like sardines in there for quite some time now, but this actually became these video addresses. I really wanted to touch on this because we found a ton of success, became a really great way for us. And we had members of the team who said, could you please continue this after, even when we go back to the office, because it's a great way just to share information. It was just like, even just small stuff. So we got an update to our fridge. We got this, I won't even go into that because it's kind of complicated. We got a fancy fridge that's kind of part of this up and coming innovative company that addresses a little bit of, keeping your stuff in different places. And we wanted to share with everyone, right? But you don't want to be sending out, 2 or 3 email updates. So we just touched on it very briefly in our weekly address by video. Everyone just pulls up their phone or their computer and opens it up at this designated time every week. And there's like a 5 to 10 minute address. That could be accomplished if you don't have Workplace. Again, I would suggest looking into those types of things. I think it's just important to have you as the leader in your company, sharing and people seeing you and hearing from you, even if you aren't all in the same building every week. You could do, you can make a Facebook chat, really, if you have, depending on the size of your group, you can make a Facebook chat if you're all connected there and just do a quick, FaceTime among the group. You could do a Zoom meeting every week, of course, too. The nice part with Workplace is that it's a pretty quick click and it's open. But any sort of, again, utilize that remote. Utilize the fact that you don't need to have everyone literally drop what they're doing and march down to a boardroom or something to go see you. Utilize the fact that they could be home, they can be, in their office, they can be in the middle of an email, but then they can just pull up their phone or whatever and click in and see you for that 5 minutes and get back to what they're doing. In my opinion, I don't see why, for restrictions, of course, I don't see why we'd ever really do big internal addresses when we have the option to do it by Zoom now, right?
We're even doing our lunch and learns. We been partaking in some lunch and learns during COVID since March and while working remotely, and we're using the same software for that as well. And it works wonderful. It's a way for all of us to connect on our lunch. It's a way for us to continue learning and developing as employees. So we've also tried to keep those lunch and learns going. We've got another one coming up next week and then another one in September. They're all internal lunch and learns, and once again, that software is brilliant. Works so well. I just want to touch on something else that as a business leader, very important to make sure that you are paying attention to confidentiality, privacy, while your employees are working off-site and working remotely. And I did put together quite a comprehensive remote work policy agreement that I sent out to all of the staff that work for Uyghurs Financial and Benefits, and have them acknowledge and sign and return to me digitally, of course, because we are now going completely paperless. So it's very important for you to, as a business leader, business owner, to put those policies and documents in place and have them signed off on, so that everything is clear, that you have been transparent in what your expectations are. I can't say enough about that document as well. So that is something we've also put in place as a result of this pandemic. So there's a lot of things we didn't have in place. We weren't prepared for this. Nobody was, I don't think. But I certainly feel I'm in a much better spot today moving forward with this organization from my perspective than I was prior to March 13th.
Yeah, I'm really happy you touched on that too, because this is the part that I'm not as in tune with, or frankly as good at. And then someone like Patty who has the pulse on the organization, or whoever it is in your organization, the development of these policies cannot be stressed enough. And even though you're through it now, it is not a bad thing at all. It's all so fresh. It really might not take much time to put together these policies, but now you know going forward, because it would be naive to think that we are out of the woods completely on anything like this, right? There very well could be, and people predict a second wave in the fall and winter time when everyone starts coming back indoors. In the future, I mean, being honest, not to be pessimistic, because I think we'll survive it a lot better than we had this time. But any of these diseases that have happened in the past maybe just haven't gone as far because the globalization isn't at the level it was. So whenever there's COVID, 20 or whatever it would be, or SARS version 3 or something, there's a better chance, depending on how the world's adapted, either in the next year, 2, 5, or 10, that something like this could come in and interrupt us in some sort of way. I think the emergency response from government and everyone else will be so much faster, so that'll take it away. But still, it's good to have your own company policies, so you're not, let's say, winging it again.
Speaking of emergency response, I've had emergency response plans in place for several years with acknowledgements as well for staff to sign. But they were things like inclement weather, tornado warnings, snowstorm warnings, fire, all of those things that you think about could happen. I never thought a pandemic could happen. So fast forward to today, I do now officially have a crisis management response plan in place. It has been sent out to all of our staff as well, including, of course, the acknowledgement that you've received and read it and understand it in its entirety. It's a couple-page document, maybe a bit more, but we have a response plan in place. We have a crisis response management team in place. Everyone knows their role and responsibilities. So should this event happen again or something similar, we absolutely know what we're doing on day one, minute one, and the staff know as well. So there's no gray. Everyone will understand what we are doing as an organization and how they fit into those plans.
Yeah.
So that's something else that's been created and sent out, and we now have a crisis response emergency plan in place.
And that's fantastic. And I'll throw it out there, since our goal here obviously is to provide value for everyone who's taking time out of your busy days to watch. So would it be possible, if anyone's interested, that we could share some of those documents with them as well?
Absolutely. I'm all about, if someone's got something that makes sense, why not share it? This is just a very crazy environment that we're all working in, and I'm sure that a lot of businesses have things in place already. I have the support of a brand and communications division manager, and I give the content. She makes it pretty and branded, and I would be more than happy to share anything that I have created, rolled out, experienced. I'm all about sharing. That's how we all learn. That's how we grow. So yeah, for sure.
I'm going to send a message in the chat. So if anyone would like, that's my email there. Feel free to send me a message if you'd like access to any of these documents or anything that we do talk about. Like Pat mentioned, you know, our philosophy, I know we do it with some, actually at pretty much all of our clients. We try and develop some things here, and it's that idea that, you know, we put the work in to develop it, why not share it out and let other people take advantage? Because things come back, someone else has got something that, hey, we created this, so why don't you guys try this? And it just saves all of us a little bit of time to probably create things that are going to pretty much be 95% the same, right? You know,
That's
it's
right.
just, you're just changing, like you said, the branding of the Uyghurs logo on the bottom to whatever company, you know, is represented in the audience here today. So again, my email's in the chat if you'd like to send a message there. I want to jump us, I guess, back a bit to something that you had mentioned before. And I'll give a little, I'll jump in for some parts of this in the sense of, you know, the transparency and communication. I think that's a pretty straightforward thing that everyone's being, you know, drilled in, is that you have to be communicating, like over communicating, and be overly transparent, especially when this all happened. But I would say arguably now too, right? Just because we're, you know, all the phases are starting to line up, doesn't mean that you shouldn't be sharing the updates from your company. So, you know, to share a bit about with us, we pulled back on a couple things. You know, when this first happened, we pulled back on some, let's call it perks that we had as a company, because we were trying to manage expenses. And for some of you out there, depending on what you know, answered on that survey, maybe you're still at that stage where you're still trying to manage expenses and see what you can keep down. So it's never fun to have to tell your team you're getting rid of this perk, or you're going to suspend this, or this is going to be cut in half, or whatever it might be, or to have to go to the extreme of having to lay people off. But what I found went well, and I guess Pat, you can, I think, vouch for it, is that if you do it in a very honest and vulnerable way, I know a lot of business leaders, you always feel like, you know, you have to be calm and steady-handed for sure, but it's okay to be a little bit vulnerable with your team and say, guys, here's what's going on. And so for example, for us, I'll be transparent with the audience. Here's that we had to make decisions early, and people started asking, you know, a month or two later, hey, is this going to come back? Is this going to be here? And we said, we don't really know yet, because, you know, we're trying to track our, you know, revenue that's been lost and expenses and anything else. And we've got a lag on that, you know, because the accountant or the bookkeeper does the books and we get it a month later, or whatever the delay is, right? So again, if that's the situation with your company, just be upfront about it. You know, I just said that. I said, we're going to be reviewing each month, but I don't have enough info to make any firm decisions quite yet. And I guess what I found is people were very understanding.
Totally.
Like, they get it.
Totally.
And especially if, you know, they're working and employed still, they're happy just to have a job still, because they knew so many people being laid off. But it's a very different approach than what you might normally do, which is kind of, you know, make decisions and not have to really explain them too much. But I think in particular now, you do. Like, you know, something that you maybe wouldn't have to necessarily justify, you just need to be extra communicating, right? And you know, explaining a lot more so that people understand where you're coming from as, you know, the manager or the business owner or the leader, and how it affects them, right? And, you know, I felt again that we had a pretty good response, considering we pulled back on some things, but then we said, we're going to be reviewing at these stages, and here's when you can expect an update. And hopefully we'll be giving some updates soon as well on some things.
And I think too, to add to that, clarity, transparency, communication, and honesty are the forefront of success for business leaders. If you try to hide something, or you don't speak to it in its full entirety, you're just not going to get the buy-in and the support of your staff. So I cannot express enough about being compassionate, honest, open, and transparent. That is what's going to get you through the day. It really is. And just by pulling back 2 or 3 things, our staff totally bought into it. They understood it. And that tells me they care about us as an organization. It's not about them. It's about the bigger picture.
And you nailed it. That level of trust that, your team knows that you have their back and they have yours in return, right? And Pat mentioned again when we're talking about working remote, there's people that are, again, they're tuning in early and they're working late because they're just getting done what they know they need to get done. And that's the level of trust that you need to have with your team. And again, it can be tough because it can be fractured a bit when you're working remote, but to get it back on track, especially now that you can have more personal face-to-face interactions and things like that. So as I'm going through, we talked about a bit of the beginning of what we did. We've actually kind of touched on a bit of, what we've done as preparation for the future. Is there anything in the middle, I guess, in terms of, where how we responded, things that you felt worked good or didn't work good? And I'll share one example quick and see if you've got some comments to it. I know when we first rolled out the worksheets for the team, like, who likes to get a worksheet that says, tell me what you did every day, right? But we didn't really know how to respond. We didn't know how we should measure this. We just said, okay, let's just start here and see where it goes. But again, we were upfront that this was we're trying something different. We were going to see how it went, and we were going to adapt it. And I believe we have changed quite a bit since that first accountability sheet.
A lot.
Yeah. But you have to start somewhere, right? And don't feel bad if you're asking for those reports. But again, just tell them that you want to evolve this into something that is a bit different maybe in the future. So I know that was something that we did that took a bit of tweaking because, again, who likes to get a thing saying, write down everything you did all day, right? Every single day. Like, we had to work through some of those kinks a little bit.
If you didn't need that while I was working in the office, why do you need it while I'm working out of the office? So yes, that was one thing that we tested. Some of it worked, some of it didn't, dependent on the role. So it's a work of progress. There are some employees that love it because it keeps them on track. And they've asked if they can continue to complete them. So you just have to adapt to every employee's strengths and weaknesses and what makes them tick. And as a business leader, I should know that of all of my employees and the supervisors that I have working with me need to be able to understand who are the people that are working for them as well. So not everyone is painted with the same brush, because you can't do that because everyone operates differently. So yeah, that's a work in progress. It's something you could try, but I feel that how I work best is just by communication and making those phone calls, video calls, and just paying attention to what the bigger picture is going on. Speaking of re-entry, phasing in, opening up, bringing staff back, something else that I've developed and put together, which I can share as well, is a wonderful PowerPoint presentation that just speaks to the re-entry safely back to work, all the protocols that we've put in place, all the things we have done as an organization leading up to this, because our staff need to know that we are doing everything in our power to keep them safe. From PPEs, if they choose to wear them, all of the disinfectant protocols, all the checks and balances, all of our walls in our building look like posters, because I'm kind of OCD that way. More is better. So we have several posters all over the building, from washrooms to lunchrooms to high traffic areas, just reminding everybody what their responsibilities are as an employee. So this PowerPoint just walks through every little item that everyone should be aware of, reminded of, and I'd be happy to share that as well. So that went out 2 weeks ago. As I said, our building is still closed to the general public. We've got our mail and courier dropping and running, and in between our double door foyer, we have an area where clients can come in and sign documents or meet with someone real quick. And we have scheduled appointments only for our valued clients. So overall, I think we're ready.
It's funny, the double door thing.
Yeah.
I've heard from our team that they said everyone likes it better. The post guy likes not having to run all the way in the building. He just drop and go. Our team likes it because there's that barrier to the outside world always there. I mean, something that, maybe at first would have felt kind of cold to lock out people, now has become this norm of people are saying, well, if I don't need to come in your building, I don't want to go in your building, and vice versa.
It's wonderful,
right?
yeah.
So it's kind of neat how we all change perspective on that when again, usually that'd be kind of maybe seen as a bad thing. I really like that you touched on too the PowerPoint for safety protocols, because again, anyone in the audience, you probably you know people or you work with people at every end of the spectrum, right? My hand's on the other end,
yeah, we are 6 feet apart.
I was gonna say we're trying to distance, so the visuals don't work as good on every end of the spectrum. So you've got people that are, like this isn't a big deal at all. We can get back in. Why aren't we doing this? There's only X cases, and they'll go normal if they can. And then you've got people, and for variety of reasons, that are saying like, I'm not leaving my home. I'm not interacting with anyone, and they go as far as to be upset with people they know if they feel that they're not following the protocols properly. So you might know, but you might not know what you are working with the people that work at your office, and you don't want to make anyone feel so uncomfortable or unsafe. So I think that document, it's not necessarily for everyone, because a lot of people just oh yeah, cool, you got hand sanitizer, great. But that speaks to the people that this is a concern for, and you can bet there's going to be some that maybe haven't expressed it, but in their in their own head they're stressing out about coming back in or being back in as an office opens up. And this was kind of that validation to them that we are taking this very serious, and we are going through as much, where everyone's getting the same memo, and we're not, I guess again, we're not taking it lightly. And I think that's very comforting for anyone that you work with that is worried about this type of thing, because you don't want them showing up, to work every day scared, like worried that, that's just going to add a layer of stress and cause other problems. And we're really going to be with COVID for a bit. So I think that ensuring to our team that everything is like, as it's safe and we're taking it serious is just so important to communicate that. So again, if anyone wants to see what we've put together, by all means send me an email, because that document was great just to highlight again all the rules too, right?
And I can add to that as well, because occupational health and safety is with all businesses in the province of Saskatchewan, and we're under very strict guidelines as to how you need to have a committee, and you need to have a minute book, and you have to have policy and procedure and all of those sorts of things. So that's just another thing that I've updated since the pandemic, because I didn't have that piece in our occupational health and safety policies and binders. So that is now forefront for our committee as well, that meets once a quarter. So it's just, we're always going to be reminding ourselves that we have to pay attention, update, pivot, tweak. Nothing is the same on any given day. So you just have to remember what's important, stay calm, and make sure you utilize the people that work for you, because a lot of them have some unique abilities that you can tap to help you. You should never do it alone. Work with your teams. That's where you get the best ideas.
And I want to touch on a bit of that, working with your team. But as a quick note, again, relating to the safety side of things, one thing I learned really well, we were dealing with something separate and talked to a lawyer about a certain processes going on. And at first when COVID hit, there was kind of this, well, this is precedence of, safety or employer law or labor law and things like that. There was, this is what we know. But then not long after, they all changed their tune and said, now that we're thinking about it, there's so many unknowns with COVID that inevitably when the dust settles, you could, like an organization could be getting dinged on an improper layoff or an improper, management of, someone had something or was in contact and you didn't pay them for, that is going to be settled out in the near, in the future, or the safety procedures too. Right now, it might be okay because everything's all, no one's really shining a spotlight or anything. But if it's revealed in 6 months to a year that you had conditions that would be deemed unsafe, there might be some precedent setting cases, I guess is what I'm getting at, that could open the door for liability. So it's always good just to have everything covered, at least to show to the best of your ability that you were keeping your team safe. And again, if you're the person who's in charge of that at your organization. And then on to, I made this note from earlier and we've circled back to a bit, the idea of, utilizing your team. Everyone's unique, everyone contributes in a different way, and everyone works different, again, as we've established. So I guess the question I've got for Pat is how do you figure out how someone works? Do you have to wait for them to come to you and say, this is the environment? Do you need to kind of get a pulse? Do you need to try different things? Like, how did you navigate that with some of our team?
You just know.
You just know. And again, you're
That's
different.
what 30 plus years experience in this industry does for you, and managing people. Sometimes you just have to go with your gut instincts. You should know your people well. It's not going to work for everybody, and you're going to have to fine tune it and adapt to different circumstances. I can honestly sit here right now and say I am super over the top proud of everybody who works for this organization throughout COVID, the commitment. They would call, they would reach out if they were having a bad day. Don't get me wrong, this whole thing has disrupted all of us in different ways. And you need to, like I said, if you know your people, it makes it a little bit easier. But, mental well-being, financial well-being, all of those things are conversations that leadership needs to be able to have with their staff, and allow the staff to speak to them about it as well. So trying to manage that in the short term of COVID was a challenge, because it was up and down days and up and down moments. But I think we've now figured it all out, and we know where the hotspots might be, or what might trigger a hotspot to appear. But it's just, once again, it's just all about knowing and understanding your people, right?
Definitely. And you're a unique case in this too, because you are so close to all of our team. And one thing that we do that maybe is unique to some other businesses is that I believe, at least when I first started here, you guys had me do a personality profile, like we did the Kobe test. I've taken some from some personal development kind of motivation, just my own, just a one-on-one thing. You can search like personality testing online. There's tons of options out there just to do, either a short quiz or like a bit longer of a quiz that gives you an idea. And if you don't have that for your team, it might not be a bad idea to go through some of those things. So you get an idea of how to, again, I'm assuming most people have, that know-how, having worked with a lot of people for a while. But if you're newer to a role, or if you have a new person that you haven't really got a full feel for yet, getting some of that baseline personality info is really good, because I would say there definitely was some surprises with COVID. And COVID, I always use the analogy, dialed everyone up a few notches in every level when it first hit. But there's probably some people that you knew in our organization, you almost could predict how they react. You knew who'd be really stressed.
Absolutely.
You knew who'd be kind of laid back.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's so important.
There wasn't too many laid back.
No, I don't think anyone was. I think that when
it was just like,
when it all hit, everyone was just up a few notches. And now it's settled a bit.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
And again, even among our team, I know that there's different people that are kind of easing back into their roles in different ways, because the stress of it all was a lot. And actually, I know that when Deb gets around to doing her presentation in September, that's a topic that she was going to touch on, was that mental health, the mental well-being, how everyone reacts differently. And again, when you're remote, you might not be able to see the cracks that are forming on someone, versus when you see them every single day and you kind of can get that, hey, something seems a bit off right now. And I guess you have anything you would like to add, kind of that?
No, and I think it goes back to what is the leadership in your own organizations, or your managers? What are they doing to get in front of that? Do you have a workplace app like we do? Are you reaching out and connecting daily, weekly? Are you just randomly doing your checks and balances with your team? That is what is going to allow you to understand what's going on with your staff. If you're not speaking with them, you're doing yourself a disservice as well as them. You have to be in front of it. Most of our staff are vulnerable. They will tell you what's on their mind. They will tell the truth. So you just have to have that environment that your staff are trusting you with information. So it just goes back to, how are you connecting with them? What is the easiest, best, most effective way for you to do that remotely, because you're not inside the office? And I think, once again, workplace is the business.
Yeah.
I just want to touch on something that you had mentioned earlier. And it's all about the labor standards laws in the province of Saskatchewan. And, there was a lot of confusion and gray about how organizations could lay off their staff. What were the parameters? Extension of benefits? Do you have to give them notice? I'm not going to get into any details, but what I will tell you is I connected with a lot of webinars early. MLT, the law firm in town, a little bit of a shout out to them, but they were running webinars every week, and they were updating emails every day. So I learned a ton just joining up with all of the different webinars that have been available to every business owner. I would encourage your leadership group to make sure that that's something they think about going forward, because the information was outstanding. There was a lot of Facebook Lives. I know Deb did Facebook Live for about 8 solid weeks, which was wonderful. We got different perspectives from different business owners and suppliers, and it was just a wonderful 8 weeks of Facebook Live. So there was a lot to learn there. But I encourage you, anything to do with labor standards, human rights, that is something you really definitely need to have your T's crossed and your I's dotted. And there is a ton of information out there. It's at your fingertips, and you just have to access it.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I think of what I was told is that no one knows what the settling is going to look like, but this is precedent setting, right? There is things that will come up that will set the tone for, oh, if you did this practice, you're going to be liable for this, right? We just have no idea. And it's probably going to take quite a while for it to come out, but you don't want to leave some sort of lingering liability out there. And looking at the time, I think we can probably get wrapping up a bit. To summarize what Pat and I have been chatting about of how can you lead your business and team through a successful emergency response. Obviously I've been close to you, Pat, but hearing it from you again had made me realize more and more that a lot of these are just good management processes already. It's just making sure you've refined how you manage and lead your team on a normal day, but being extra sensitive to what COVID has done and extra sensitive to the difference of people's, stress levels and how they're reacting, and the difference in where they're, working from home or remote or from the office, how we're managing that piece, and then applying those good fundamentals, in there again with that COVID lens a little bit. And then as well too, the other piece of it, so that's like, the keep doing the good things, but then the other side is the development of the new policies, procedures, and everything going forward.
Absolutely vital.
So important.
Vital.
Yeah.
And sign off from your staff is vital as well. It's important to put a signature acknowledgement to everything and every policy that you're putting out. We have an employee handbook, obviously. It's quite extensive, and the pandemic is now inserted into the employee handbook. So it's just like fine tuning, tweaking, creating, recreating. The wheel just keeps getting bigger, and that's okay, because we want to make sure that we are set, ready, and that we're communicating proper, clear information to our team. And I'm just gonna, I know we're in the wrap up stage, but I just got one little bullet that I'd just like to say to all of you: be honest, be clear, have compassion, and always be available. Everyone has their own story.
Yeah, no, it's a perfect message, because again, as it all shakes out, you don't know who's got family that's going through some issues or at risk, or maybe a spouse is laid off, or the kids are all home now and they never had to deal with that. There's a lot of things that you said you kind of got to get a better idea of what's going on in your own team's head there. Again, applying those good management fundamentals and just putting that, the extra policies, procedures, which if anyone needs any of that, again, my email is in the chat. I'll do one quick kind of wrap up, but if you have a question, take your time to start typing it in right now. Question or comment. Of course, we always like to hear if you guys enjoyed this and if you got some good value out of it. But I know when I've been on some of these, they're like, oh, is there any questions? And you're typing furiously, and it's like, oh, no questions. Okay, we'll close it off right now. So this is the call for any questions or comments if you'd like to add before I pass things over. I do see we got one from Joanne here. Thanks for being willing to share the policy documents. That's terrific. So a little bit off topic, but what would you say have you done that has had the biggest positive impact to your team's cohesiveness? Our team has been working remotely and are spread across Canada, always been working remotely and spread across Canada. So we don't get together as a team. I would like to tap into any insights that you might be taking away from this most recent experience with your folks shifting to remote working locations. So again, What have you done that has had the biggest positive impact on your team's cohesiveness? What would you be thinking?
I would say workplace,
I
and you're
figured
going to
you'd
say
say-
Zoom,
Yeah.
and the combination of the two of them are pivotal to our success these last just about 5 months now. Without either of those two functions, I would not be sitting here saying our COVID experience has been good. I would probably be talking a different tune. So I would love to be able to share our different groups that we've created on our workplace app, because it's not just one, there's several, and it's engagement, and it's personal, and it's just a wonderful thing that we've created as an organization, and every employee has jumped on board, and to me that is what has saved us from disengagement with our teams.
I think you nailed it. It's and it doesn't necessarily need to be workplace. That's what worked really great for us. If I'm thinking right, workplace it's like, again, if I'm quoting it right, like $3 a month per person, and it has to do with if they're actually using it. So if they actually didn't log in that month, it's not charged. So if we've got 40 people, and let's just say everyone is using it, we're probably going to be spending in the course of this year like let's say $1,500 on that. I would say money well spent for sure to keep people in touch. Another option, depending on maybe like the tech savviness of your group, I know a lot of organizations that use Slack. So what I would look for in terms of keeping people together is, if you're not all in the same building, and maybe you're like Joanne where you've always been remote, what are the ways that you can emulate some of those the good things of it being in the same building? The bump in at the water cooler or the printer, the people in the room at lunch together, the people being able to knock on a door and say, hey, do you got a quick second? Like, how can you better emulate those things? Because I think those are just the natural things that keep people connected, because then you have that, oh, how was your weekend, and you get a conversation going. So Slack, workplace are just two things that I know are like really quick, instant ways to connect with people.
Zoom meetings.
And then the Zoom meetings too. It's just because then you get everyone's faces and you kind of get that group thing going again. Again, if you haven't ever, I guess, been going through this, we tried to replicate what we had before COVID hit. But in the case of if you're already remote, trying to find little, social gatherings to connect the team. For example, I'm on the Saskatchewan Chamber Board, and we've done a couple socials because we realized we're doing all these board meetings, and none of the new members on the board are getting to interact in that kind of, bump in the hallway way that they normally would, where it's like, oh, hey, I'm Colton, what business are you with? Like, how long have you been on the board for? Like, we don't get that. So we actually started doing a couple little optional socials where I just threw out a Zoom link and just say, hey, whoever wants to connect and chat for like 20 minutes, go for it, right? If you're used to working remote, you might already do that a lot, but
we've done that with our own organization on a Friday after Colton's address.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 4:30. Who wants to, have a beer through workplace? So that's been fun too.
Yeah. That's it's honestly been as simple as that. It's been, I'll be there. I'll have a beer cracked. Anyone feel free to join. And you can't mandate that people go to that, but it's pretty easy for people to tune in and just say hi for a little bit. And that's felt for sure like we haven't been. I haven't seen some people in person since it started. Like, I'm sure of it, but I honestly could not tell you who, because I've seen them all through screens so much. Yeah.
Thanks for the question. That's a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone else has any other questions that they'd like to add in, my last comments, and again, if anyone wants to jump in, feel free to add in there. Deb, again, she was supposed to be doing this presentation, but we had to bump her back. I know she is excited and eager to share with the WESC audience on a little bit of, less of a corporate journey through the pandemic and a bit more of a personal journey, and talking a bit about mental health and things like that, and as well too how the benefits landscape has changed. So that's going to be in September, and I wanted to, I guess, share a little bit in case you did tune in, hoping to get some info in that regard. So I asked the team, what's a good fact I could share? They said that if for your employee benefits, something, and I'm not a pro in this, I'm just going to mention the fact, and you can reach us if you want to get an elaboration on it, is that a lot of carriers are doing different types of credits for their benefits the past few months, because they've understood that people weren't able to go to the dentist even for the first 2 months of this, right? There's been a lot of added mental health tools that have been in there. So what I was told to pass along is that if you if felt like you haven't necessarily gotten anything different from your usual benefits package, you can reach out to your carrier or your broker and find out what type of credits, offerings, freebies, deferrals of things are available, because I know that a lot of them have really stepped up to the plate. I'm going to probably misquote this, but I believe Blue Cross has done something in the form of like covering a certain percentage of some of the premiums, again, for something like dental, because they knew that no one could go to the dentist, so they didn't want to penalize everyone. Chamber's done the same thing. I guess you would know that piece. Yeah. So if you maybe don't know if you've gotten something like that, I think a lot are doing it automatic, but definitely reach out to your broker or your supplier on that. And maybe there's something that they can do for you. Or if you just said, hey, we need to defer this, or we need help with this, they seem like they're all very flexible and understanding. So that's my quick benefit fact that I wanted to share.
Awesome.
Otherwise, thanks so much, Pat, for joining me. Again, I told everyone that I roped Pat into joining, and I think she did a fantastic job. You said this is the first time
in
a webinar like this. Yeah. So the camera loves you, because we've had you doing this with our office for I told her, I said it's the same thing, just like a few times longer, and with people we don't know that well. So I see one of our comments here. Joanne said, engaging on authentic webinar, lots of information, really appreciate. So that's fantastic, because we definitely want to be keeping this valuable and kind of a bit lighter too, because everything's so serious sometimes.
Yes, and I just want to personally thank whoever has joined this webinar. Thank you for joining. Thank you for attending. We just wanted to speak from our experience and as well from our heart. So thank you once again.
Absolutely. And I'm going to pass it off to Carly with West, with a few other announcements before you guys head out. So thank you again, Carly. And I know Josie was kind of involved with some communications, and just the whole West team. You guys have done an awesome job. Obviously, we work really closely with you before this all hit, but you guys are doing a great job just keeping valuable things out for membership and engaging people like us, and we love to be involved. So thank you so much for coordinating and getting us the audience too.
Great. Thank you so much, Colton and Pat, for taking the time to share with us today. I also want to say thank you to everyone who was able to join us on today's webinar. You will be able to view this webinar on demand on our website by the end of the day today. Our next upcoming webinar is next Wednesday, and the topic is how to thrive in your home office. The registration for that is now open on our website. Thank you, everyone, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks.